collaborative consumption? Is it changing the way people live, or is it just a passing fad? With me to discuss is Rachel Botsman, co-author of What's Mine is Yours, How Collaborative Consumption is Changing the Way We Live. Rachel, collaborative consumption or the sharing economy, how do you see it developing?
Ownership is in the nascent stages of going through a massive transformation. And it's a really interesting question. What does it mean to own something in the digital age? The notion of needing to own physical stuff is being replaced by the idea of being able to have access to experiences. You don't need to own the car. You can pay to drive the car through a car sharing system. You don't need to own the expensive dress. You can pay to rent that dress. The interesting thing is the assumption that people would make this switch because of cost-saving reasons. But actually what we're seeing is luxury is one of the fastest growing segments, because this idea of access can become really aspirational. So I can access a watch, a car, a dress, you name it, any product in real time and have access to goods that would otherwise be out of my price reach.
Do you find that this works in certain areas or certain countries better than others? For example, in the UK, we almost have an owner mentality. I know you mentioned luxury watches, for example, and I'd far rather own my own than, borrow one for a night, for example.
But what happens if someone said to you, you could own 12 different ones for the year? So one month you could have a Rolex and another month you could have a Cartier. Don't get me wrong, everyone has a category of ownership that they're very attached to, whether you've got to own your house or you've got to own your clothes or you've got to own your car. But what you often find is there is one category of goods that you would give up ownership around, that you don't have that form of emotional attachment to. Millennials have a very different relationship to ownership. Many see ownership as a burden. I think Germany is a really interesting country to look at. These behaviors seem to be more mature there, where they asked 18 to 24-year-olds, you can own a car or you can own a smartphone. And 75% chose a smartphone. Now, the reason why they chose the smartphone is that is the remote control to the physical world. That phone can give them real-time access to all these goods that we've had to have fixed ownership around.
Now, you say we're wired to share. Now, I would have thought it's actually the opposite way around, especially in a Western society. Surely it's about all one-upmanship now?
Sharing is the innate behavior. We've been sharing since we hunted in packs and pods, and since cooperatives. If you look at the history of man, sharing has been the behavior. This idea of, individually owning, having our own turfs and kingdoms, that's actually a pretty new construct. It's human instinct to share and cooperate. All that's happening is technology is changing that in terms of the ways that we can share and the scale that we can share.
And in terms of economic potential, what sort of opportunities does this represent?
It's massive, because if you think about any underutilized asset or any underutilized value in the supply chain, that's what we're talking about here. And I think it's traditional businesses realizing this isn't a startup trend, or this isn't a reaction to the recession. This is a transformative lens in the way we think about assets and the way we think about trust. So the first thing to ask is, is our consumer behavior changing? Are we seeing a shift in what consumers want? Should we be moving from a more product-based model to more of an experience and service-based model? The second is to actually say, is there an asset in our business that we could create wealth and value from in a really different way that would create not just new revenue streams, but a different relationship to our company? There is a highly commercial side to this that is good old-fashioned capitalism. These ideas can, and we've seen with, there's now over 15 companies in the space with billion-dollar plus valuations. These aren't just feel-good companies. Yes, they can have purpose, and yes, they can help people, but they have very viable business models.